Okay.
You need my vote on something.
Tell the officer that he needs to hurry up, is what you're telling him.
Still works in the yard.
Mike's bailing on us here.
Well, yeah, can she still drive? Don't worry about it.
Where y'all headed?
Service given a speech.
All right.
We good? All right.
Okay, I call a meeting to order of the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1, 2, 3, 4 Board Meeting and Power Center Board Meeting to order on Monday, December 7th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. at Terrell City Hall, 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. Mr. Barber, could you do invocation, please?
You pray with me, please. Our Heavenly Father, I want to ask you to be with us this morning as we work on these decisions that need to be made that have to do with the TIRZ for the city of Terrell. And I ask you to help us to make the right decisions and do what's best for the citizens here. Be with us all and keep us safe. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
If we could please stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state,
Okay, moving right along, adoption of minutes. Is there any discussion or any questions about the minutes from October 31st, 2022?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Motion has been made to accept the minutes. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second has gone. New business.
So, Chairman and Board, first I want to thank Donna Anderson for joining us. We appreciate you, very first meeting. Always good to have somebody who's new. This is a exciting board, partly because we get to do stuff that is just so future-oriented. It's a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes to be looking at agreements that are 40 years long, but that is meat and potatoes for this group. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Of all of our many land areas that we cover, we're only going to talk about TIRZ number 4 today. So for reference, TIRZ number 4 is the one north of US 80, and it's the one that runs from Big Brushy Creek all the way across to State Highway 205. So that's TIRZ number 4. And we're only going to talk about one part of TIRZ number 4, and that's the one I've got this map of. Some of y'all have seen this 50 times, and some of you are brand new to it. I'm going to use this version of looking at it because it kind of helps explain where we are. So I've got US 80. So if I'm coming from downtown Dallas, I'm over here and I'm driving along here, and I get to the Big Brushy Creek floodplain, so I'm past Windmill Farms, right? And then as I'm coming along here, I've got the big flyover where I can go on Spur 557, or I can go under on US 80. And what we're dealing with is all of the land that is behind what I would call the negative uses that used to be an entryway to our community. So as you would come in here for years and years and years, you would see the old Triple X place, you'd see that old hotel out there, and this is the land area behind that, okay? And so when we put it into the tax increment refinance zone, the goal was maybe we can do something to refurbish this damaged area and have a better looking entryway to the city of Terrell. There's a very large tract outside of the city limits over there that's owned by a company called Hines. That's roughly 600 acres, and then it adjoins a chunk that's the old racetrack property. If you remember where the old racetrack got torn down out there, it adjoins that, and as part of our economic development negotiations, they ended up purchasing that because owning that 93 acres makes the rest of this over 600 acres much easier to develop. So that's the basic idea and the basic land area we're at, and I'll come back to this map again here in a minute. So for now, let me cover the PowerPoint, and this is on everybody's screen. Hot dog. So North Spur. North Spur involves the voluntary annexation of 608 acres. That's the part that I just showed you that was outside of the city limits. It includes 92 acres that are already in Terrell, so that's the old racetrack property. Lots of people don't realize that old racetrack property goes way up past where it fronts on US 80. They did purchase that so that that could be used for light industrial. We're doing a nature preserve as part of that. So the goal is, and what we've been working on for a while now, is to be able to do a nature preserve that goes from US 80 all the way up to FM 548. And that's all of that distance right there won't ever have a roadway crossing it. County Thoroughfare Plan has no roads crossing it. Forney doesn't want to build a road across it. We don't want to build a road across it. So that's a really long stretch that can be future nature preserve, future good park for folks in the city of Terrell. We're going to do 500 feet dedicated to the regional outer loop. There's an outer loop study going on now between I-30 and Interstate 20 to connect that with a new freeway, and we're hopeful that that'll get built. And this is a dedication for free of that land. I, for one, get nervous about buying 500 foot of right-of-way anywhere, so to have the developer willing to just give that is an awesome thing. It includes a backage road to enhance east-west connectivity. So the idea there is that people drive very fast on US 80 when they're leaving Terrell. And if we were to put 1,500 houses out there and an industrial development, we would be seeing a bunch of accidents. So what we wanted to do is to have what's nicknamed a backage road, and the backage road just operates as a way, literally, to go a frontage road that fronts on US 80 and Spur 557, but a backage road that comes back behind the front parcels. So there's a 20-acre or a 16-acre retail parcel here, there's an 18-acre retail parcel here, and we collect all of this traffic along the back side of that, and they actually can come all the way down to the old racetrack property 80, we can get a traffic light there eventually, and make it, that's where you're in a more standard roadway or arterial cross-section there. And so they'll be building this as a condition of opening up land over here, because that was the safer way to do that. So when I say backage road, that's this guy over here, and the going joke around here is that they've proposed to name that Longhorn Boulevard. I have two Aggie engineers, and for some reason, they're reviewing a set of plans where the engineer has put Longhorn on it. So we'll see if that stands or if the Aggies push back on that. So anyway, the public portions of the project are funded by the WCID. So many, many years ago, when Charles Whitaker was but a wee lad, they put a water control and improvement district on the land. And they have powers, and they could actually prevent annexation if they wanted, based on some state laws associated with WCIDs. Instead, we've negotiated through the process. They're going to leave the district in place. They'll use that with a little bit of a tax rate to collect some money to help fund the thing. And then the TIRZ will collect county and city property tax dollars that come from this new development, pay them over to the WCID, and the WCID will be the entity that does all the borrowing associated with this project. The city will do 80% of the tax increment from non-residential, 60% from residential, and the county contribution is at 60%. The county is providing more than that into the TIRZ overall, but we'll be keeping that portion for us because we want to do things like improve County Road 237A. We want to do some other improvements in that zone, so we don't want that money to go to the developer. We want to hold some of the money from the project, and that's what we're doing there. See if I can do the magic here. I'm trying. All right. So again, 240 acres of the light industrial commercial retail, 1,531 homes, 3 different sizes of lots. They're mostly 40-foot and 50-foot lots. There's a handful of 70-foot lots out there as well. For reference, Woodlands, which is that development right off Rose Hill in Terrell, those are 45-foot lots. So some of them be a little bit bigger, some of them a little bit smaller. They're doing a $12,000 residential development fee, so we get part of that, and the developer gets part of that. No apartment units. The zoning has already been through our Planning and Zoning Commission, and it was already unanimously recommended by our Planning and Zoning Commission. It's got about 100 acres for public park, a big trail system. We have the option to create 2 public improvement districts, and the idea there is that, and they've actually signed their petitions for these, what we want to do is we want to have this in a public improvement district where the industrial buildings here can pay for maintaining this Terry Creek floodplain here. So we always like when a developer comes in, we don't want to accept drainage to take care of. We want them paying taxes so that we can take care of that drainage. So same thing we did at Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's pays an extra tax rate so we can take care of the pond at Buc-ee's. These guys are doing the same thing. We'll be taking care of this drainage, mowing it, cleaning debris out of it, making sure that the bridge structure here doesn't have any problems. All of that is taken care of by the property taxes from a PID over here. The public improvement district over here is really kind of a one-trick pony that takes care of the nature preserve over in this area. Because again, that's a heavy maintenance expense for us, and we want these folks contributing to that as well. And then also this retail will contribute to that maintenance as well. Okay, so those are the 2 public improvement districts for that. New water line along US 80. We've been doing a lot of work on this. We will pick up close to the corner of Metro Drive and US 80 an existing 16-inch water line that the city has, and we'll take that all the way over to this development here, and that's paid for 100% by the developer. And then there's some public amenities. I'll show you more about that here in a second, and they'll put an HOA in place. So here's our general schedule. We've had the developer present to City Council. We've got some newspaper notices out, and we plan on December the 20th, Council would take their first votes on this, and then on December the 28th, they would take the second reading votes on this. So in advance of all of that, it's not lawful for the city of Terrell to make a decision about TIRZ number 4 funds unless you guys are also on board with that. And since we've kind of been beating this up for quite some time now, we want to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to take a vote on this particular topic. It is 100% unchanged since we created TIRZ 4. So every element of this deal is exactly the same deal we discussed in executive session down at County Commissioners Court, and it's the same thing that we've been in executive session about for several meetings now. Here's the presentation that they gave to City Council, and I'll walk you, yep. Up and down. Okay. I don't believe you. It is a little high-tech for me. Here's all about Hines. Hines is a really huge company. They do residential developments all over, and when you have 171 developments currently underway, yeah, they're busy. And they're the kind of people who don't buy and hold land. They buy it, and then they build on it, and they're not in the business of waiting. So that's a big deal for them. Here's developments they have. The nearest one is something called Creekside in Royce City. So if you want to see stuff they're building right now, and the zoning standards are highly similar to what Royce City approved up there. The next slide shows you this break that I described before. So those are those same zones that I mentioned. The next slide shows you just more pretty pictures and the PIDs. Here's what some of the houses will look like. And does that wrap that up? Oh, amenity center. They'll do a nice amenity center in the middle. I'd say the best thing about Hines is they're really a marketing engine. So if you're out there shopping for homes, Hines is going to get all up in your face and make sure that they're sending you all of the messages you could ever want. Don't you dare type new house in east of Dallas, and they're the kind of people who grab you on Google and keep sending you messages, right? So there's park, pretty pictures, again, good development that they're working on, and then I think that rounds out the PowerPoint presentation. Hey, it might be, it might be. So I want to go back to this map real quick so that I can make another point clear. One of the deals in the development point is that they're providing a $3 million payment that will be escrowed so that the city can work on acquiring land. And what we plan to do on that is that this little zone right here, basically here in this part is the area that they own that we will be acquiring whenever they dedicate their land, right? So we get part of this nature preserve here whenever they plat this land. Then we want to actually extend and go north from there. So I would tell you that 2 or 3 years ago when we started these negotiations, I probably could have bought this 383-acre piece of land for about $3 million. I bet you it costs more now because that's the way of the world, right? Everything's more expensive, but we'll work through that process. This is a strategically important piece of land, not just because it's got this nature preserve opportunity here, but also because this piece of land right here is the only part of Windmill Farms that's in Terrell ISD. And so our goal for a long time has been that we can't control Windmill Farms, we can't annex Windmill Farms. They have rights and rules that we can't trump them on, right? So what we'll do is we'll sit down and we'll try to work through that process with them, and we're very hopeful that we'll get a deal done with them to expand the nature preserve. But a $3 million upfront payment sure helps along the way. The other thing we'll use that $3 million for is to buy out the last of the noxious uses down here. There's the building that used to be a XXX place that says liquor and donuts now. We'll try to buy that, and then the actual XXX place. Both of those are directly in the path of the outer loop, so no problem for us to buy those, and we'll just work through that process with them and get all of that cleaned up. Obviously, one of the goals of the developer is to have a nice, clean, pretty-looking front door. So that vet office that's out there, that's okay. That's not in the way of the outer loop, and it's not, any kind of noxious use or anything. But that stuff that's right up there on the other side, that's the stuff that we're looking at to purchase. We probably won't bother to buy that big telecommunications tower right now. We'll wait and let TxDOT buy that when they're developing the outer loop. There's no reason to put that particular expense on us. So that's kind of overview of the project. And before I jump into the details of the resolution, you know, I know we've got different knowledge levels about North Spur because different people have learned more and more about it. I think Commissioner Hunt, Commissioner Barber might be tired of hearing about it. Some of it started when Councilman Whitaker was on council. So any questions just about the overall picture of North Spur and what we're doing and what the approach is?
I have a question.
Please.
You talked about the public improvement districts around the development. And so I want to make sure that they will do what they say they're going to do to keep those places what we agreed to.
So great question, and my answer is we don't trust developers enough to trust them to take care of things. And so most cities do a public improvement district where they allow the developers to assign the board members of the public improvement district. We only allow the creation of public improvement districts of this type, by the way. There's many kinds of PIDs. This kind of PID, we only allow if they agree that our city council is the board of the PID. And so for the other PIDs we have, like for example, the one at Crossroads and that sort of thing, we just come to the city council every year and we say, hey, city council, Glenn Caldwell needs this much money to make the Crossroads pond look good, well-maintained, all that sort of thing. And we hire a contractor, Glenn hires a contractor, and they go out and they make all of that look as good as we can make it. So it's kind of outside of the trust process. We just make it the city council, and then the city council makes decisions with their extra property tax assessment that they pay. Yeah, good question, yeah.
I got a couple of things, Mike.
Yeah.
You say it's going to be like 1,500 homes, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
How is this going to line up on a timeline with the expansion or new creation of lanes on Highway 80 to give us enough pavement for all these cars? Do we have any idea how that's going to kind of line up and work out, or?
Well, I would say that they're going to be building these houses while TxDOT is building the US 80 project from, I'll call it roughly Lawson Road to roughly 741, is that right? The Shell station, the 7-Eleven, the McDonald's in Forney. So that's a project that they have on the books. My understanding is, from a timing standpoint, neither of these are going to start in a year. They're both going to start about a year after that, right? So you've got probably, let's call it 18 months before either of those start. And then these guys will start building stuff, and they're trying to deliver houses right at the same time that construction process is going. Now, ideally, it would have been nice if these guys were running a little slower, because I'd sure like to have a new bridge over US 80, over the East Fork of the Trinity River. But, you know, it is what it is. You know, if we had allowed them to develop outside the city limits, they'd probably have gone faster. So we've slowed them down a little bit, but not enough to make a big difference in that offset in that schedule. So
I think another thing that's really important that we need to assure the public that this is not a Windmill Farms type of development. It's not a mud district, anything like that. And the city of Terrell is going to be in control of it, basically.
absolutely. And so one of the things that I would say was a beginning point of view of the city council was it's better if somebody will annex into the city limits, because that way it's our fire department that responds, it's our police department that responds, it's our code enforcement that can go out there and take care of things. If the district, is having, frankly, Steve Rogers, Chris Snap, Mike McCaska, our engineering team review all of their plans, we review all of their construction. Some of the problems at Windmill Farms just date back to the fact that they really made bad decisions about the core infrastructure, right? So why is a road in Windmill Farms not doing very well? Well, there really wasn't a public authority overseeing it, because that mud was able to go out there and just do it however they wanted to. We enforce a street standard that is tried and true in the city of Terrell that's thicker and more expensive. And we have people come to us and complain about our new street standards, because, oh, you're making me build too much depth, there's too much subbase, blah, blah, blah. And we say, we don't care what you think. Those are our street standards, you need to build to our street standards. So as you're in a mud, that has us have the opportunity, and I like to clarify this too as well. I'm not saying anything bad about the sheriff's office or the constables, right? They do what they can do over in Windmill Farms. On the other hand, they're not really connected in the same way to anything that's in the investigatory world, right? I can be proactive with a local police department because I can do detective work. I can make sure that I get to know those people out there. I can connect up my enforcement with other things going on in the city. And by the way, they're also going to be required to put a flock camera system in, and those are the ones that we will maintain, again, paid for by the Public Improvement District. Those are the cameras where when you drive in and out of these roads, we're going to be looking at that license plate. We don't look at a face, we look at a license plate, and we know whether or not that license plate is connected to something bad. That goes to my 911 folks, and my 911 folks can immediately be dealing with that. So we just think there's a lot there where when the city is maintaining it and the city can oversee it, we get a better result out of it. I tell the story from time to time that's a very important little detail of the world, and that is that Windmill Farms, Travis Ranch, and some of the other mud districts out in the county, they receive Section 8 folks from Mesquite and Garland. Well, do you think Mesquite and Garland do a good job doing inspections in Windmill Farms? Of course not. It's too far to drive. They're not paying attention. It's not in their city limits, so they care a little bit less. And in this particular case, when we annex, that means that our Section 8 program is the controlling authority. Garland and Mesquite don't place people in this development. City of Terrell places people in this. Well, that means that my inspectors are going to go look at the house, and my inspectors are going to make sure that everything is up to snuff. We get 435 housing vouchers every month, and those, instead of just being spread throughout the city of Terrell, will be spread through the city of Terrell plus this. And so it doesn't increase our vouchers. What it does is it more evenly gives us a chance to distribute our vouchers. And frankly, from my point of view, I just don't trust the idea that Mesquite and Garland are attentive when they come out to Kaufman County. I don't buy that. So anyway, there's a lot there, and it's something we've talked about several times, that operationally having this development be in the city limits as opposed to out makes a world of difference. They started out with rights to do somewhere in the 600 to 900 apartment range, and just like a lot of I have the comment related to the apartments next to Windmill Farms that those are inherently transitory folks. You don't get your apartment on the frontage road if you're looking to stay there for a long time, right? So it's inherently a cycle over, cycle over, cycle over. When these guys came forward and they wanted to have some apartments in those zones that show as retail, we said, no, we're not really for that. We discussed that with the county. The county said, no, we're not really for that. And the theory is that if we could get them to wash the apartments out, then when we do build apartments in Terrell, they can be in neighborhoods, and they can be folks who like living here and keep living here and put down roots in the community. We're not anti-apartment, we're anti an apartment complex that's just there to cycle people through on a short-term basis, because then they don't really become inherently part of your community. So that's an important element as well, and I think just getting rid of the apartment allowances in this particular development, I think that was a good thing for us. So yeah, I could keep talking about that because I find it to be one of the biggest and most important parts of the deal, that we aren't going to spend the next 100 years looking at a district just outside our city limits in the school district where we just don't have any control and we don't have anything to say, and they can do whatever they want to, and it's entirely developer controlled. That's a bad model. So yeah. So you want me to get into the resolution now? Okay, so same agenda item, and this time the resolution is the thing to take a look at. And did Dora bring something in? Yeah, yeah. If you could hand that out, that would be awesome, and I'll get to that in just a second. So TIRZ number 4, resolution 20221. So one of the things Dawn and I talked about was just the numbering convention and the labeling convention. So we listed this in the agenda slightly differently because it's the 8th resolution of all of the combined boards, but we decided that better to do it as label it TIRZ number 4, resolution number 2022-1, and that more effectively communicates for the long term. And some city secretary 35 years from now, Dawn probably will retire within 35 years, I think. Maybe. So she will, we've just got a little bit different numbering convention than we originally had. So the whereases, really straightforward. We've created this TIRZ back in August. The TIRZ is stating that they support the creation of the Water Control Improvement District Fund. So we use the word fund as a very important piece of jargon in the TIRZ world, right? Because what you're doing is you're saying, hey, we're TIRZ number 4. TIRZ number 4 receives money from city and county and holds it. But whenever we create a fund and direct transfer into that fund, that's where the developer starts to know that there's some money that might get transferred to them if they perform, okay? So when we say we're creating the Water Control Improvement District Reimbursement Fund, okay, that's a special account of the TIRZ, and now JAIRS, HAL, everybody on the internal side of operating this, we know how to keep track of that money now. So that's one of the most important bits of jargon in here. The next whereas, you want to promote development. We're all in agreement with the owner, with the WCID. We're reducing the number of single-family units. We're eliminating the multifamily units. And then we're creating a fee schedule, a TIRZ obligation, and TIRZ obligation meaning we're deciding based on this resolution that it's okay to sign an agreement and obligate our funds in the future, okay? So that's the reason for the jargon there of a TIRZ obligation. So then what are we resolving? Section 1 on the next page, it says all the whereases are good to go. We agree with them. Section 2 is the standard language that we use related to how we finalize these negotiations. So what we do is we say, okay, the city manager is allowed to negotiate, and the mayor, and this time the mayor / the board chairman are allowed to execute a development agreement between the board, acting through the city, High Point Ranch, Kaufman Water Control Improvement District number 1, to facilitate the development of the property. The TIRZ portion of the agreement, so here's your important language, and it's exactly the same stuff that's from the PowerPoint, and it's exactly the same stuff that was talked about in Commissioner's Court. 60% of the city M&O tax with single-family portion, 80% of the city M&O collected for all the other non-single-family WCID property, and 60% of the county M&O tax. Eligible for 40 years or until the project costs are met, all of which shall be limited to the terms and conditions of the TIRZ number 4 participation agreement. That's the agreement between the city and county. So when you hear the jargon, the participation agreement, that's the state wording for the agreement signed between the city and the county. So that's what that is.
What is M&O tax?
So that's the maintenance and operations side of it. So our property taxes has 2 components, one being maintenance and operations. That's around 60 cents right now. And then the other one is INS, interest and sinking, and that's our debt obligations. That's not included here. And I kind of skipped over that point, so I'm actually glad you asked that question. Remember that our INS tax rate, the county INS tax rate, and the county road and bridge rate are not included here, okay? So the county will receive 100% of its debt fund, INS fund. It'll receive 100% of its road and bridge fund. They'll go use that for important county projects. And then meanwhile, we'll be using that INS tax rate to support projects. And as the city council talks about it, they really like supporting projects that are back over in the core of the city, right? We have some very ambitious downtown plans, can't pay for them unless we have tax base coming along to support that. And so this allows us to use all of the INS tax rate associated with the project for projects at the discretion of the city council. So M&O is maintenance and operation. Section 3 basically says that, hey, you're the TIRZ board, you consent to expanding the boundaries of the WCID. They're another taxing entity, so we're agreeing that it's okay for them to exist. And that's basically them incorporating that racetrack land in their boundary of the WCID. And then it says, okay, we recommend that, because you remember, you always make recommendations to the city council. So section 4 walks you through there. TIRZ board recommends to the Terrell City Council that the funds generated solely from within the intended 700-acre boundary of the Kaufman County Water Control and Improvement District Number 1 be paid over to them as described for the concept plan and the project costs. And let me make sure I show you the exhibits, and that's why I had Dawn hand out that extra piece of paper. So the first exhibit is a legal description of the 700 acres. So it is not interesting reading, but it's important reading because what we're basically saying here is if it's not on this 700 acres of land, the developer has no claim on it. And that's a really important part of the contractual obligations, right? So then you flip over here after several pages of that, and I have to dig to get there. Sorry, I'm going to move slowly so I can find the right page. Almost there. Okay, if you go to agenda item page 20. Agenda item page 20, it's just the map, okay? So first we're attaching the legal description, next we're attaching the map, and those show us, you know, again, the land area and then what they're supposed to be doing on the land area. And of course, this map also shows a lot of the infrastructure they're supposed to be building. Then we accidentally attached the legal description a second time, and the correct attachment is actually this one that we handed out right here. So if
That page is 21 to 32.
Yes, ma'am, yes, yeah. So we made a little mistake there, no big deal. What I meant to hand you was this list of project costs here, okay? So this is a substitute couple of pieces of paper. And so the commissioners have seen this before because this is basically an excerpt of the project plan, finance plan, and I guess Councilman Whitaker and Juan, you guys have seen this as well. This is the list of things that they're going to spend money on with the current cost estimate of that stuff, okay? So if I take a look at this, we say, okay, they're going to be grading, building roadways, putting up streetlights, water, sewer, drainage. They've got phase 1A, phase 1B. They've got the wastewater treatment plant, a lot of discussion about that because there'll be an on-site wastewater treatment plant that first they operate and then they provide over to us. Off-site water.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
When you say, I understand on-site wastewater treatment plant?
Mm-hmm.
You said something about they're turning something over to us?
Yes, so they'll build it. They'll have a package plant up in operation. After we're satisfied that they're doing a good job operating it, then we take ownership of it and we operate it. And that goes back to this, do I trust my developer or not? I'd rather have my staff of professionals operating it because I know that I've got qualified people who can do a good job with it, yeah. So again, a lot of this then is just kind of repetitive because what it's doing is saying North Spur, Pod 1, North Spur, Road 1. These are just different steps of their development process. So you see each time it says grading, roadway, sidewalk, streetlights, water, sewer, storm drain. So this is really what we've intended to include there. They've given themselves on the second page a big, hefty contingency of 25%. So then it shows the cost number and the reimbursable portion of that, because there are a handful of those costs that aren't reimbursable.
I have a question.
Please.
I know you all have already talked about this. So from my understanding, what are the TIRZ costs are the costs that we're going to receive? Or
The TIRZ costs are things where after they spend the money to build a public improvement, then we would be reimbursing them for those costs. We don't spend any money directly in this particular TIRZ. When we get over to TIRZ number 1, we're going to talk about places we spend money directly. In this deal, we're not directly spending the TIRZ dollars that are part of this.
But the reimbursables is what we're going to
Exactly.
reimburse them.
Right. So the developer will spend money. The WCID will be a avenue that pays back the developer. So the WCID is a financial engine for the developer. It has a property tax rate, and it has its own board, and that board looks at money spent by the developer. That board says, okay, that's eligible for reimbursement. They can take the WCID tax rate, they take money from the TIRZ, and they can only spend that money on things that are public infrastructure eligible to be reimbursed, right? So when they build the backage road, when they build the city streets, when they build a drainage facility, all of the stuff on here, they create an expense, and maybe it's $20 million, $30, $40 million for different steps along the way. And then we look at that, we say, yep, that road's really out there, and they did it correctly, they followed Steve Rogers' rules, and then they're eligible for reimbursement. How much can they get reimbursed? Only the actual costs, and they can only get reimbursed those actual costs up to the amount that they actually generate in property taxes. And that's why we always go back to this thing of, it's very performance-based. If property values don't perform, then they won't get their money back very quickly. If property values go way up, then they'll get their money back faster. If they put retail on those retail parcels, that 15-acre, 16-acre parcels that are out there, if they go and hurry up and put retail out there right away, then that's property value. Somebody paying taxes, great, they can get paid back faster. If they sit on that land that's retail for 20, 30 years, then that's revenue they're not getting because there's no additional property value there. So it's incumbent upon the developer here to actually put stuff out there that will pay them back for their development. So, okay. So that's kind of the whole thing in a nutshell. Your action today authorizes, there's going to be a small amount of paperwork that we think that Mr. Salazar is going to have to end up signing to say, yep, they really voted on that. That's really something we agreed to. So you're authorizing him to do that. You're authorizing me and Mayor Cremona to go forward with our next steps in this. And then whenever I show up to the December 20th City Council meeting, I'm able to say, yes, this is something that the TIRZ number 4 board either recommended or said, no, don't do that. Very important, if you want to say no, this is your last chance to say no. So I always want to make it very clear here. We've been spinning along for a while here. If you don't like it, then vote no. And if you do like it, then vote yes. And we'll always take your recommendations straight on over to City Council, okay? Yes, sir.
Question here is the date for these probable costs were June 6, 2022.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
So how do we handle that these aren't the true probable costs? There's things that went up since June.
Well, I agree, and the reason that the 25% contingency is in there is to kind of handle that. And frankly, let's say they only build part of it in 2025, and they say, man, the market's not doing very well, we better mothball this thing for 6 years, right? Well, I know, again, all the costs are going to be different, right? So we only show that as estimates at this time, and they're not binding numbers, right? Yeah, they're just there to say, hey, this is what we thought at the time we voted on it, and that gives some clarity. But you know,
Conceivably, this could cost us a lot more than what?
it could cost the city more. The county has a cap on your total contribution, so yeah.
And if, so Heinz is supposed to be all that and a bag of chips in putting up development,
Right.
but the housing market seems to be doing its own tricky
Yes.
thing going on. So they could, as you say, if it doesn't pan out, they could just hold.
Absolutely, and I never want anybody to think otherwise, right? Because what they want to do is they want to get all of this stuff under contract, and they want to say, okay, this is my anticipation of what they'll do. They'll get all under contract. Their engineering is nearly done because, man, they're working fast to get engineering done so they can take projects to bid. They're going to bundle all that up. They're going to take those projects out to bid. I bet you if they get good prices, who knows? Let's say they try to go out to bid on this thing in the summer. How will construction prices look in the summer of 2023? Man, now I'm guessing, right? If it should so happen they get good pricing, they might decide to go forward quickly. If they look at those prices and they say, man, construction prices are really bad right now, interest rates are still high, they might decide to wait. That's going to be a market decision they make. And I hesitate to predict an exact date where they'll build. As I was telling you, I think it's going to line up with the construction of the East Fork Bridge of US 80 improvements, but, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. They would like it very much if they could deliver 200 houses a year, which puts them into and out of this thing in about 8 years, right? So if they're doing 200 a year, they're going to get to about 1,600. They're at 1,531, right? Within 8 years, they'll be in and out of this thing. So if they take 2 years to get it up and running and building stuff, and then they spend 8 years selling houses, they'll think they're awesome. That's what they'd like to do. Will they really do that? Well, we'll see what interest rates do, and we'll see what 50 other factors in the economy do. So.
Okay, any other discussion before we request a motion? Can I get a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
I got a motion. Can I get a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
You get to talk.
Thank you, guys.
All right, are we going to move into, no?
No executive session tonight, or today.
Okay, so I guess that's it. We can adjourn?
We can adjourn.
All right.
How'd we do?
You're the boss.